Hey friends, welcome back to the channel. In this video, we're going to look at 5 things I would do differently if I started the 737 MAX type rating from scratch. On this channel, we're going to explore pilot performance, learning tips, and mental fitness strategies to help you get the most out of your flying career and also achieve the best work-life balance possible. Learning to fly a modern aircraft, be it in the civilian space or in the military, is a major learning task. The amount of detail and the complexity of modern aircraft is enormous. The amount of material the pilots need to get their heads across is huge, and then there's the behaviors and the attitudes that's expected of safe pilots. So on this channel, I plan to share some of the struggles I've had in learning, adapting, and performing at the highest level in my military career, getting through to high levels of performance, and ultimately to becoming a safe, qualified professional pilot. It's been pretty full on, to tell you the truth. It's been all in over here for 6 weeks in total, and focusing on a lot of things that I hadn't thought about in a number of years. A lot of things that I sort of took for granted would still be there. Haven't in fact taken a lot of effort, a lot of work to get them back up to speed, polished off, and get my performance where it needs to be to finish this course off and to be ready to step up to the level of a professional first officer on the Boeing 737. So in this video, I touch on 5 key tips that I've really gleaned in the first 3 weeks. They've been pretty hard lessons, honestly. They've been pretty hard to lock down, and they've really helped bring my learning up to a higher level. They've reduced the amount of time I need to put into my learning, and they've really helped me lock in the debrief comments that come from the instructors, my peer, and my crash buddy on course, or even things I've noticed myself. So really going back to the sort of game I was bringing to the table in the C-17 days, and I'm certainly feeling a lot better, a lot more motivated, and a lot more swept up, and really enjoying my flying and my simulator training much more than I was back in weeks 1 and 2. So I hope this is valuable for you. I hope you get something out of it. If you do, feel free to subscribe, drop some comments below. I'd love to hear from you and your thoughts on the video here, and enjoy. Okay, before we jump into the 5 tips, I'm going to spend some time going through the details of what the 737 MAX type rating actually involves on the course I'm undertaking here. Type ratings are required by local aviation authorities, and they ensure that pilots who are licensed to fly particular aircraft types have the specific knowledge and skills to safely do so. There can be differences between different aircraft, even within the same manufacturers. If you look across the Boeing fleet or the Airbus fleet, there are significant cockpit differences. So it really is vital that pilots are completely familiar with the particular airplane they're operating, and that's the reason behind the extensive type rating that pilots go through when learning to fly. So there's 2 distinct phases of the type rating, and the first is the technical or the competency-based training, and the second is the simulator or the flying phase. So in the first, in my case, I stepped through 25 different modules on the 737 MAX, everything from landing gear to automatic flight systems to pressurization to navigation, and learning the technical details of the aircrafts. And this was done remotely at home via an online learning portal. The second phase is the simulator phase, and that's being conducted here in London Gatwick. The course runs for 27 event days, so 27 physical contact days with staff and instructors, and it's conducted over 2 different campuses at Faraday and also the Gatwick campus, both near the London Gatwick airport. Okay, the first is the Flight Simulator Training Device, or Part Task Trainer, which is really a mock-up of the aircraft. It doesn't move, it doesn't incorporate all the real panels of the real aircraft, but it is an effective way to learn basic procedures and basic checklists. And the second is the Full Flight Simulator, which features full motion and simulates the real aircraft as close as possible. So the course includes 7 normal operations events. So this is really sorties or training events, either on the flight training device or on the Full Flight Simulator, where we learn basic checklist flows, basic procedures, how to start the aircraft, taxi, take off, climb, and get back on the ground again. So really the basics of operating the aircraft. And that was the first part of the course. From there, the course goes on to 14 non-normal events, which looks at how to handle the various malfunctions of the aircraft. These are split between the flight training device and the full flight simulator. And by the end, it involves looking at the most complex emergencies. So complex engine failures, loss of thrust on both engines, flight control malfunctions, and that type of thing There are two major assessment pieces on the course. The first is a technical knowledge examination, which occurs halfway through the course, and that's a 3-hour ground trap, so a 3-hour theory examination looking at multiple choice knowledge of all the aircraft systems and how it's operated, and also memory items, so ensuring that we know our memory recall checks accurately and exactly, and also making sure we know our limitations exactly. And the course culminates with the licensing skills test, which is a test across a simulated sector across Europe or the UK or somewhere else, which allows the instructor to see our ability to fly the aircraft in normal operations, deal with emergencies, and safely use our skills and our behaviours and knowledge to bring emergencies to their logical conclusion and get the aircraft back on the ground. Okay, let's dive into the 5 things I would do differently if I was to start this course all over again. So certainly for the first half of the course, I found the technical difficulty and the demands of getting into the publications for the 737 quite challenging. Having to go between a suite of different publications, interpret rules, apply them to the training events and in the syllabus, and actually bring out the learning outcomes was quite a challenge to get up and running. It's probably taken me the first 4 weeks to get back up to speed again, and certainly I'm still not where I was going back a few years. So one thing I think I do differently is just keep learning things at a technical level, especially in the lead up to a course like this. So it might be computer coding, it might be a language, it might be a design skill, but something that actually stretches and challenges your ability and brings a new skill and a new ability to the table. Number 2, thinking big picture and going beyond the details. So in my mind coming here, I was mainly focused on what the 737 is, how it differs from the C-17, and what it's going to be like to fly the aircraft. So I would certainly be thinking about time horizon. It's a 6-week course here in Gatwick, and to begin with, I was actually struggling quite a lot, not being able to come up to speed in the way I expected. Given that over the 6 weeks they expect someone to come up to the first officer standard, graduate with a type rating, then the focus really needs to be on improving. Not being perfect, not being top of my game, just on making incremental improvements and really focusing on those things that can help me improve, help me internalize and make use of the feedback I'm getting from instructional staff. So being patient and really expecting that I'll get there in the end by putting in the effort. And the other big picture piece I would focus on is effort areas. And this is a term I've borrowed from a sporting code in Australia. I've borrowed it from the National Rugby League, where they know that any player, or for my case, any pilot, is going to have areas where they're naturally more talented, naturally more skilled, and areas that they like to work on to improve. These are the areas they probably don't need to put time into because they're naturally stronger. So for me and for players in sports, it's about what are those areas that are overlooked, that are really holding back our game or performance, and that we're not naturally going to look at, and putting effort into those particular areas to improve our performance. Okay, number 3. Using learning techniques. 2 in particular that I'll mention is visualization and memorization techniques. Coming into the course, I approached it in a fairly relaxed way by going through my syllabus and going through my learning events and reading through, getting familiar with what I needed to do for that next event. What I didn't do was dedicate a lot of time or really use the tips and tools that I knew would work well for memorization and for visualizing how to handle the aircraft. So for memorization, for example, there's a range of memory checklists we need to rote learn and have ready to go at any point in time without error. Rather than just reading these through, I've now picked up the habit of using a deliberate technique to break down each of those checklists, to learn it through repetition a number of times, and then to test myself after I've learned that checklist. This is a far better way to approach my learning game, and it's actually saved a lot of time and really increased the reliability and the accuracy of what I'm doing in the aircraft. Visualization is the other topic, sometimes called chair flying, and I've never met a pilot who enjoyed this part of training, but nevertheless it's very important. This is where we're sitting in the chair, eyes closed, hands on the imaginary controls, and just feeling what it would be like to be flying the aircraft. So in my case, I struggled a lot with the engine out or the engine failure procedures, particularly for takeoff. I actually couldn't remember which foot I would use on the rudder if I had an engine failure. So if I had an engine failure on the number 1 engine or the number 2 engine, it was really disturbing me that I couldn't naturally imagine and respond to that failure with the correct rudder input. So by spending some time visualizing and slowing down and really getting a feel for how the aircraft would respond, I was able to improve much more quickly. Okay, number 4, being okay with being wrong and bringing a beginner's mind. Okay, beginner's mind is derived from the Zen Buddhist term Shoshin, and it's all about approaching a task or a learning journey as if you're entirely a newbie at it, open to a new approach, a new way of learning, a new way of performing. It took some time, it took some effort to really loosen up and put that experience of mine to the side, but not discard it, and be open to learn in ways from people who have different opinions and who've come up in a different system from what I was used to. So you'd be excused for thinking that pride, ego, and identity and being right is a huge thing for pilots, and to an extent it is. Flying aircraft of any sort is extremely safety critical. It's extremely important that we know what puts the aircraft in jeopardy and avoid those sorts of things and avoid the traps that we can fall into. So it's very hard in my experience to be very focused on the details when at the same time being open enough to consider different and new perspectives. So for an example, my last year flying the C-17 was super intense. I was away about 4.5 months of the year. I'd circumnavigated the world numerous times, 11 days flying, 1 or 2 rest days, and a lot of responsibility doing that with just 2 pilots on the aircraft and some super important missions in different parts of the world. So coming from what I thought was a very high standard with some exacting expectations of what a pilot needs to do involves just acceptance of different styles of operating, different styles of thinking about the same things, and different styles of learning. So for me, a big challenge was just allowing these things to be in what you might call cognitive dissonance. So my brain on one level being very, very focused on how to fly the aircraft in ways that I've been taught and that I'm used to, and at the same time being open to flying that aircraft in a different way and not necessarily being having to choose which one's right at the time, allowing both things to be true in my mind as I go through this learning journey. And the more I've done that, the more I've found I can actually learn from both types and compare them and contrast. And in time, I think this will allow me to learn really to get the best out of my experience, and importantly, to be more open and relaxed in my approach. And number 5 is being fully committed to the learning journey. So being fully committed to me really means bringing no excuses to the table and being willing to look myself in the mirror and challenge myself. So some key indicators here that I'm really bringing my all is my willingness to record and incorporate all feedback that I get. So all debrief points, all trends, things that I'm doing repeatedly, capturing these and making sure that I've got a way to review those and prioritize which ones need to be addressed when, and making sure that any major issues that are carrying over from more than one event, so from one flight simulator event to another flight simulator event, they're actually being acted upon and I'm doing something to fix that error. And the second part here is having a system both for my preparation, for my training performances, and also for my learning and debriefing. One of the huge things that we do that's a massive, massive boost to our performance as professional aircrew and pilots, I think, is detailed debriefs. This is something I've really taken for granted, and in my last role, it was notably absent from the way people conduct themselves in that part of the business. But pilots spending the time and effort to pull apart, debrief a performance and identify the learning points is an absolute game changer, and it's just so crucial that crews will take time to record and incorporate those lessons. Okay, here we are. They're the 5 things I would do differently if I was to start the 737 MAX type rating from the top. And given I'm 4 weeks through here and we're nearly at the end of the course, I'm pretty glad I've gone through these experiences and I've learned these points. They're things that I think would have been very difficult for me to bring to the table from the very beginning, but it's certainly things that have helped me lift up my performance to date. And I think they've put me in good stead for learning throughout the rest of the course here, and also at the operator proficiency check and the line training that's going to be coming up for me in the next couple of months when I head back to Australia. So I'm amped, I'm excited. I hope this has been valuable for you. If it has, feel free to subscribe, even refer or send this episode to someone else who might benefit from it. And until then, I look forward to seeing you in my next video.